Hi everyone. Through July, I'm going to be producing a series of short videos explaining what's next in Crofton Parish. As we live with the ongoing challenges and restrictions on our life together due to the COVID-19 pandemic, it's really important that we can gather a clear idea of what the season ahead looks like for us. So, what's next in Crofton Parish? In this first video, I want to explain the challenges that we face as a church and what we can do in response to them. We are beginning to see some lockdown restrictions easing, and there is a deep desire within all of us to go back to normal as quickly as possible. But that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen in lots of sectors of life, and that's particularly not going to happen in churches. Unfortunately, churches are places with a much higher risk of viral spread than some other environments. I was reading an article in the last couple of weeks that listed the top 5 places that you are most at risk of catching coronavirus, and churches are number 4. I'm really sorry about that. That's to do with the extended periods of time that we spend together. It's to do with singing. It's to do with all that interpersonal contact, and to do with things like sharing communion and that kind of thing. So we are going to be living with restrictions on what it means to gather as a church for a period of time. Let me just give you an example. Because the government has said that we can meet as churches, but let me explain to you what the restrictions currently are. Presently, for us to open our doors on a Sunday morning, we would have to do it with 2 meter social distancing. That reduces the capacity at St Edmunds down to 20, the capacity at Holyrood down to about 50. So, and you have to remember, at the beginning of March, we had 280 people crammed into Holyrood like sardines. So that is a big change for us. So social distancing reduces our capacity. No singing, no worship, which is such an important part of our life together. No sung worship. Shorter services. They want you in and out of there as quickly as possible to reduce the time in which you're indoors together. Minimal interpersonal contact, and no communion. Well, not communion as we recognize it. So we are not really going to be able to kind of gather as we are used to gathering for some time. So what can we do instead? Well, what we're going to do is we are going to reorganise Crofton Parish, particularly at Holyrood. St Edmunds has got its own plan and its own process, but we are going to reorganise our Crofton Parish into groups of 30 people or less that can meet safely on site, not on a Sunday morning, but throughout the week through different slots. They can meet safely on site for an hour of sharing together, of prayer, of support, of learning, of just being able to be physically present as the people of God. We are calling these new groups streams. And we want to offer an invitation for everybody that's part of Holyrood to be part of one of these new streams. Now, I'll explain in the next couple of videos some of the logistics of it all. Simply to say, it's going to be quite a mammoth task. We're talking nearly 400 adults, 500 people in total, organised down into groups of 30. And there'll be a rota through the week where there'll be some slots. You won't be able to meet every week, maybe once a month, maybe a little bit more, but we will be able to start to gather safely so that we can support each other, we can pray together, we can just, we can kind of begin to function as church, as the people of God. We'll still be one river. And that's the phrase we're using for this season, one river, but we'll be meeting as many streams. We love it when the river flows together, one big river, but we're not going to be like that for a while, I'm afraid. Instead, the river is going to multiply out to lots of different streams. One river, many streams. It might be that you don't feel particularly great about the idea of deconstructing our church into groups of 30, and I entirely understand that. But I wanted to just explain one thing that might make us feel a little bit more positive about it. You see, as we saw from our Bible reading this morning, the story of Philip, the church over the centuries has had two modes of being. We are most familiar with the gathered mode, where we meet together as the people of God and it's all wonderful. But the other mode is the scattered mode, what it means to be scattered as individuals or as small groups into the world with God at work. And over the years, and even around the world today, there are lots of churches that can't function in a gathered mode at all. So the church in China or Iran is growing hugely, but they're under so many restrictions they can't meet they can't really meet openly. Often, particularly through the 20th century in China, they had to meet in secret in house churches. And it reminded me of the Transformers. Now, I know you know about the Transformers, robots in disguise. Transformers have got two modes of being. This is Bumblebee as a dragon. There we go, I didn't know that. And so here's Bumblebee, he's a dragon, woo, he's got wings, he can fly, isn't that great? But Bumblebee has got two modes of being, so he can transform. So we take his wings off. My thanks to Greg Johnson and his family for lending me a transformer simple enough for even me to use. You pull his legs back and they become his legs this way, and then you turn him around and his arms go down, and oh look, and they pull back like that. I don't break him. And then, now you give his wings have become a sword, and he's a giant robot. So the Transformers have got two modes of being, and they can move smoothly and fluidly from one to the other. But we're not quite so good at the second mode of being. You see, in the West, it's been hundreds of years since we had anything, since we weren't able to just gather safely. So we have perhaps lost the memory of what it means to be the scattered people of God. So it's almost like we can't really move fluidly between the two modes. We have to take all the pieces apart and then put them back together again separately. But there are things that we are going to learn in these months ahead that we might not learn simply stuck in gathered mode. And I'll talk about them a little bit in the next few videos, but I think there'll be a lot to learn, a lot for us to experience, in a lot of ways for us as individuals, as households, and as a church to grow in being in gathered mode. But you see, we won't be in gathered mode forever. This season will come to an end, and we will be able to gather again. So we're going to transform Bumblebee back. You've got to kind of push the two middle bits together so they join up. That's it. There we are. There we are. And we will go back to what we were before eventually. But perhaps our experience of being the scattered people of God will enrich what it means to go back to being the gathered people of God again in the future. But unfortunately, it looks like that's quite a few months off. So for the next season, we're going to be one river, but we're going to be many streams.